I learned early on that nothing came without a price. The art world was no different. I had the skills, the passion, the talent, but I didn't have the money to make my visions real. What I needed was someone with deep pockets, someone desperate enough to prove their cultural worth, and Liam fit the bill perfectly. He wasn't my first target, but he was perfect. A businessman with an obsession for collecting art, someone eager to align himself with the elite, trying to prove himself with his acquisitions. He wasn't flashy, didn't try to win me over with grand gestures. He was patient, steady, a rarity in a world of men who thought everything could be bought. I had a role to play, and I played it well. He was just another pawn in the game I had mastered. I kept him at arm's length, kept it strictly professional. Never let him see the real me, the woman who had studied people like him for years, learning how to take what I needed. He never pushed, and I never let him in. But even as I maintained control, there was something about him that intrigued me. His intelligence, his quiet confidence, the way his eyes lingered on me for just a moment longer than they should. I told myself it didn't matter. He was just another stepping stone in my ascent to the top. When our first kiss finally came, I let him think it was his idea. It was slow, deliberate, calculated. Yet as his lips met mine, I felt something deeper, something I had spent years pushing down. But I couldn't let it show. This was business. I would play my part, and he would play his. A quiet evening, a glass of wine, and the city's lights casting shadows across his sleek apartment. It had been weeks of meeting him at gallery openings, dinners, and casual encounters, but tonight felt different. His apartment was a sanctuary of taste and wealth, everything I had always wanted but couldn't quite touch. I dressed careful, elegant, poised, distant. He offered me a glass of wine and our fingers brushed. It was intentional. His touch lingered for a moment longer than necessary. The spark between us was unmistakable, and yet I masked it. He was a collector, not a lover, and I wasn't about to let that shift. We talked about art, about life, stories flowing like an easy melody, but every word seemed to pull us closer. When I showed him a new painting I'd been working on, his eyes traced every detail of the piece, then slowly moved to me. My hands, my face, my eyes. I couldn't tell if he was interested in the art or in me, a shift in the air. A new tension crackled between us when he leaned in for a kiss. I was careful at first, keeping my distance, but his lips were warm, soft, and there was a hunger behind them that mirrored my own. For a moment, I hesitated, then kissed him back, just as deliberate. It was slow, tender at first, but then there was a hunger that burned just beneath the surface. My hands moved instinctively toward him, but I pulled away before it could go further. I had built walls around myself for a reason. I couldn't let him break them. Not yet. That night, as we lay together, his arm draped over my waist. I felt the weight of everything I had carefully constructed beginning to shift. Was I really in control anymore? This was supposed to be a business transaction. But as I lay there, heart pounding, I couldn't escape the fluttering feeling deep inside me. Weeks passed, and every time we met, the chemistry between us grew undeniable. I kept my distance, kept things professional, but it was becoming harder to pretend. The warmth of his touch, the way his attention felt like a private conversation, it was more than I had expected, more than I wanted. One evening, we went to dinner, dimly lit, the kind of upscale restaurant that was all quiet elegance and hushed conversation. But it wasn't the restaurant, or the wine, or the setting that made the night stand out. It was the way he looked at me, as if I were the only person in the room, as if I mattered more than anything else. Back at his apartment, there was an intimacy in the air, a quiet electric hum that neither of us spoke aloud, but both felt. We stood close. His breath brushed across my skin, and when he kissed me, I didn't hesitate. This time it was different. It was urgent, hungry. I responded with equal fervor. I let my hands wander over his chest, feeling the hard planes of muscle beneath his shirt. He pulled me closer, his kiss deepening, his touch exploring, as if memorizing the feel of me. There was something raw, something new in this, something I hadn't expected. His hands trailed down my back, urging me closer, as if pulling me into him was the only thing that mattered. I let him. My body responded to his touch in ways I couldn't control. The connection between us was undeniable, and as our bodies intertwined, I found myself questioning everything. Was this still about business? Or was it something more? Later, when we lay in his bed, the soft sound of his breath filling the silence, I couldn't ignore the weight of what had shifted. Was it real, or was I losing control? I wasn't sure anymore, and that terrified me more than I cared to admit. Months passed, and with every encounter, the walls I'd spent years building crumbled more. Our meetings became frequent, so natural, so easy. He'd come to expect me, to rely on me. And I, though I hated to admit it, was beginning to feel the same. This night felt different. I could feel it in the air, the tension thick with anticipation. It wasn't just desire anymore. It was a need to be seen, to be known, to be something real with him. I had spent so long keeping control, but now all I wanted was to surrender. When his lips met mine this time, there was no hesitation, no distance. It felt like everything had led to this moment. His hands, firm yet tender, moved with a new intensity as they roamed over my body. His touch sent shivers down my spine. I let go of all the carefully constructed walls I had built to protect myself. My hands slid over his chest, down his stomach, memorizing the feel of him beneath my fingertips. He wasn't rushing this. His touch was slow, deliberate, pulling me in closer. The heat between us grew, every kiss, every touch, leaving me breathless, wanting more. I felt his lips on my neck, soft but insistent, trailing down to my collarbone. My body arched toward him, responding to his every movement, every whispered word. There was no fear anymore, only the feeling of being lost in him. When we finally collapsed together, tangled in the sheets, I realized I wasn't pretending anymore. This wasn't a game. I wasn't playing a role. I was with him completely, and that terrified me. The days that followed felt like a whirlwind. Every time I saw him, the woman I once was, the one who kept everything at arm's length, faded a little more. The walls I'd built to keep my emotions in check seemed to slip away with each encounter. I spent nights alone, staring at my paintings, lost in thought. The distance I had kept from everyone, including him, was beginning to feel like a lie. I wasn't sure how it had happened, but my feelings for Liam were no longer a strategy. They were real. Lying next to him, his hand resting on my waist, I realized something that both exhilarated and terrified me. I had fallen for him, slowly, reluctantly, but undeniably. As I watched him sleep, his features softened in the moonlight. I realized something else, too. Maybe I wasn't the only one who had been playing a game. Maybe he had been falling for me, too. And that thought, for once, made me feel something I hadn't expected. Hope. That fragile hope, that unexpected flicker of warmth, was something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. I had built my life on control, on calculated moves, on keeping everyone at a distance. But with Liam, everything felt different, uncertain, real. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. He stirred, his eyes fluttering open, and a soft smile spread across his face when he saw me. That smile, so genuine, so unguarded, made my heart ache with a tenderness I hadn't known I possessed. We spent the day together, talking, laughing, simply being. It was a day of quiet intimacy, of shared moments that felt more significant than any grand gesture. We walked through the city, hand in hand, like any other couple, oblivious to the world around us. For the first time, I felt like I belonged, like I had found a place where I could be myself, without pretense, without masks. But as the day drew to a close, a sense of unease settled over me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change, that the fragile balance we had found was about to be disrupted. That evening, Liam took me to a private viewing at a new gallery, a space that was both modern and breathtaking. The art was stunning. Nung, a collection of bold, provocative pieces that spoke to the complexities of the human experience. As we wandered through the gallery, I noticed a familiar figure in the crowd, a woman with sharp features and an air of quiet authority. It was Isabella, a renowned art critic, someone whose opinion could make or break an artist's career. Isabella approached us, her eyes fixed on Liam. She greeted him with a warm smile, but her gaze lingered on me, assessing, questioning. I felt a chill run down my spine. "Liam, darling," she said, her voice smooth as silk. "I didn't expect to see you here. And who is this lovely lady?" Liam introduced me, his hand resting gently on my arm. Isabella's smile tightened, just slightly, but I caught the flicker of something in her eyes, something that felt like a warning. "It's a pleasure to meet you," she said, her voice cool. "Liam has exquisite taste, not just in art, but in company as well." The conversation that followed was strained, filled with unspoken tension. Isabella's questions were subtle, probing, designed to uncover my intentions, to expose my vulnerabilities. I felt like a specimen under a microscope, every word, every gesture scrutinized. As the evening wore on, I couldn't ignore the feeling that I was being judged, not just by Isabella, but by the entire art world, a world that I had tried so hard to conquer. I realized that my past, my carefully constructed persona, was catching up with me. Later that night, back at Liam's apartment, the silence was heavy, charged with unspoken words. I knew I couldn't keep my secrets any longer. I had to tell him the truth, to lay everything bare, even if it meant losing him. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest. "Liam," I began, my voice trembling slightly. "There's something I need to tell you." I told him everything, about my past, about my initial intentions, about the game I had been playing. I told him about the walls I had built, the masks I had worn, the fear that had driven me. I told him about the moment I realized my feelings for him were real, about the hope that had blossomed in my heart. He listened without interrupting, his eyes fixed on mine, his expression unreadable. When I finished, there was a long, heavy silence. "I understand," he said finally, his voice soft. "You were trying to protect yourself." "But I hurt you," I said, my voice choked with emotion. "I betrayed your trust." He reached out, taking my hand in his. "You didn't betray me," he said. "You were honest, eventually. And that's what matters." I looked at him, my eyes filled with tears. "But can you forgive me?" He smiled, a gentle, reassuring smile. "There's nothing to forgive," he said. "We all have our secrets, our pasts. The important thing is what we do with them, how we move forward." In that moment, I knew that I had found something rare, something precious. I had found someone who saw me, not for who I pretended to be, but for who I truly was. The following days were filled with a newfound sense of peace. We talked openly, honestly about our pasts, our fears, our hopes for the future. We built a foundation of trust, a bond that was stronger than any secret, any lie. One evening, as we sat on his balcony, Watching the city lights and Kale below, Liam turned to me, his eyes filled with a quiet intensity. "I have something to ask you," he said, his voice low. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He opened it, revealing a delicate, intricately designed ring. "Will you marry me?" he asked, his voice filled with love. I stared at the ring, my heart overflowing with emotion. I had never imagined that I would find love, that I would find someone who loved me for who I was, flaws and all. "Yes," I whispered, my voice choked with tears. "Yes, I will marry you." As he slipped the ring onto my finger, I knew that I had found my place, my home, my future. I had found love, not in the art world, but in the heart of a man who saw beyond the masks, beyond the games, to the woman I truly was. And in that moment, I knew that I was finally free.